Ex-best friend, Jessica Mulroney, split from her husband, Ben, after 16 years of marriage.
She's helping me find the dress. Say yes to the dress. Woohoo! Suit style.
Reading a tell-all memoir. She'll give Meghan Markle some peace, I suppose. I asked more specifically. Oh, got it. Understood.
At 45 years old, most people choose peace. They protect their names. They stay quiet. So when Jessica Mulroney finally opened her mouth after years of silence, it wasn't for attention. It was because she couldn't carry it anymore. She was there, in the room. She heard what Meghan said when the cameras were off. And what she's sharing now, nobody was supposed to hear this. This changes everything. Hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss a thing. Let's get into it. For years, Jessica watched from the inside, not from the sidelines, not through headlines or gossip columns or secondhand stories. She was actually there, in the room, present for conversations that were never meant to leave those four walls. She heard comments that would have made jaws drop if anyone outside that circle had been listening. She witnessed moments that cameras were never allowed to capture.
I'm not saying Jessica Mulroney styled Meghan perfectly, but it was definitely better than these sorts of things.
And through all of it, she kept her mouth shut. That's what loyalty meant to her back then. You don't speak. You protect the people you're close to. You convince yourself that whatever happens behind closed doors isn't your story to tell. Even when things felt off, even when words made you uncomfortable, even when you started questioning whether what you were seeing matched what the rest of the world believed, you swallow it. You move on. You tell yourself it's not your place. And for a long time, that worked. Jessica watched Meghan's story take shape in the public eye. She saw interviews get replayed over and over again. She watched one version of events harden into something that felt permanent, something the world just accepted as fact. Meanwhile, another version stayed locked away, hidden.
Whatever happened to Jessica Mulroney, the one-time best friend of Meghan Markle, whose children were
known only to the people who were actually there. Jessica was one of those people, and she carried that burden alone, year after year, telling herself that endurance was the same thing as loyalty. But here's the thing about holding something like that. It doesn't stay light forever. At first, it feels noble. It feels like you're doing the right thing by keeping your head down. But over time, it starts to shift. It gets heavier. It sits on your chest when you're trying to sleep. It follows you into conversations where you have to bite your tongue. It creeps into moments where you want to speak, but remind yourself why you can't. And after enough years of that, you start wondering why you're still protecting something that was never really yours to carry. That's where Jessica found herself, stuck between what she knew and what she was allowed to say, watching the same narrative play out on screens while holding on to memories that told a completely different story.
Meghan's ex-bestie felt about her little series on Netflix. But before we get into the article,
And at some point, the gap between those two things became impossible to ignore. Jessica isn't doing this for attention. She's not looking for her 15 minutes of fame. She's not trying to sell a story or build a platform or tear anyone down for sport. When someone holds back for this many years and then finally decides to speak, it's not about chasing noise. It's about something deeper. It's about reaching a point where keeping it in hurts more than letting it out. It's about releasing pressure that's been sitting on your shoulders so long, you forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. She's 45 now. At that age, most people are choosing comfort. They're protecting their peace, they're keeping their names out of drama and their reputations clean. They're not volunteering to step into the spotlight and say things that might make powerful people uncomfortable.
Closely with Jessica for a long time. What does this mean? We're going to explore all this today.
But Jessica couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't keep watching, keep holding back, keep pretending like she didn't know what she knew. The burden had become heavier than staying silent. And when that scale tips, when staying closed off actually takes more energy than finally opening up, something shifts inside you. You stop asking yourself whether you should say something. You start asking yourself how much longer you can keep not saying it. That's the place Jessica reached. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. Finally ready to put down something she'd been holding for way too long. And what she's about to share isn't rumor. It isn't speculation. It's what she saw with her own eyes and heard with her own ears when nobody thought anyone would ever talk. Jessica remembers one comment that stuck with her more than any other. It wasn't screamed. It wasn't part of some heated argument.
Ask Jessica. Tyler Perry didn't just lend Meghan and Harry his house. He practically gave them a soft landing when they fled the UK.
It was casual, relaxed, almost like it was nothing. Meghan looked around the room and said something along the lines of, "The Queen's just a little old lady in a hat. Why should I bow to her?" That was it. No drama, no raised voice, just dismissal. And that's what made it land so hard. Because this wasn't someone venting after a tough day. This wasn't frustration slipping out in a weak moment. This was calm, confident, like she meant every word. And here's the thing. Jessica says it wasn't a one-time comment. It was part of a pattern. The way Meghan talked about the Queen in private didn't match the way she smiled and curtsied in public. The curtsy, that was theater. The bowing. Just something she did because she had to, not because she felt any real respect behind it. To Meghan, according to what Jessica heard, tradition wasn't meaningful.
Served as a bridesmaid in the Sussex's wedding in May 2018, while her twin sons, Brian and John, participated as...
It was outdated. The ceremonies, the protocol, the history behind it all, none of it seemed to carry weight. It was like watching someone go through the motions while silently rolling her eyes the whole time. What makes this hit different is what the Queen represented to so many people. Decades of service, consistency, a life built around duty and showing up no matter what. And here was someone who had just married into that world, already measuring whether any of it was worth her time. Jessica didn't hear someone struggling to adjust. She didn't see a woman trying to find her footing in an unfamiliar environment. What she saw was someone standing on the outside, looking in and deciding she was above it. Not lost, not overwhelmed, just unimpressed. That's what stuck with Jessica, not the words themselves, but the energy behind them.
Guys, I got back in touch with Jessica Mulroney. Also, is Meghan Markle secretly fearing a split?
The way Meghan carried herself like the traditions around her were small, beneath her, something to tolerate, not embrace. And once you see someone talk about something sacred that casually, it's hard to unsee. It changes how you read every smile, every wave, every moment of public grace. Because now you know what's underneath. You know what they really think when nobody's supposed to be paying attention. For Jessica, that comment about the Queen wasn't just a slip. It was a window, a glimpse into how Meghan saw the whole thing from the start. Not as something to honor or grow into, but as something to endure until she didn't have to anymore. The Queen wasn't the only one getting talked about when the cameras turned off. According to Jessica, pretty much every senior member of the family became material at some point. And not in a loving, playful way. More like entertainment. Something to pass the time.
Their reputations, they stay silent. So when Jessica Mulroney finally spoke, it wasn't because she wanted attention, it was because silence.
Prince William was one of the first targets. The way he stood, the way he talked, hands always clasped, voice measured, that stiff, formal posture he carries everywhere. Meghan would mimic it. She'd do this impression of him that turned the future king into a punchline, not someone to take seriously. Just a character, someone to laugh at behind his back. And get this, Kate wasn't spared either. In public, Meghan had nothing but praise for her. Smiles, warm words, picture-perfect moments standing side by side. But in private, totally different story. Jessica remembers comments about Kate being stiff, overly rehearsed, like she was always performing instead of being real. Even Kate's smile, one of the most photographed smiles in the world, got picked apart. Meghan called it artificial, practiced, something Kate put on rather than something she actually felt.
You know what I found out, and I did actually hear from Jessica. She finally wrote my text.
Then there was Charles, his speeches, his hand gestures, the way he moved. All of it became material for private impressions. Jessica watched Meghan mimic him too, doing little bits that got laughs from whoever was in the room. It wasn't mean in a loud way. It was casual, almost breezy, like making fun of these people was just normal conversation. And that's what made it unsettling. It wasn't one bad night. It wasn't stress boiling over. This was a pattern, a rhythm, something that happened regularly enough that Jessica stopped being surprised by it. The royals weren't treated like family. They were treated like content. Punchlines waiting to be delivered whenever the mood struck. What's wild is how different this was from what the world saw. On camera, Meghan looked graceful, poised, respectful. She smiled at the right moments. She said the right things.
Okay, this is kind of Meghan Markle adjacent, but I have been meaning to address this for a while. So, does anyone remember?
She looked like someone trying her best to fit into a world she wasn't born into. But behind closed doors, according to Jessica, it was a different performance entirely. The graciousness disappeared. The warmth switched off. And the people she stood beside in public became jokes the moment the doors closed. Jessica didn't see admiration. She didn't see someone learning the ropes or finding her place. She saw someone looking down at the people around her, studying them just enough to turn them into impressions for a private audience. And the worst part? It worked. People laughed, the room went along with it, and Meghan kept going. Now here's where it gets wild. Out of everyone Jessica heard Meghan talk about, one moment stood out more than the rest. And it wasn't about William, it wasn't about Kate, it wasn't even about Charles, it was about Princess Anne. If you don't know much about Anne, here's what you need to understand.
Jessica's face on the phone when Meghan is conveniently recording her own engagement, or should I say second engagement.
She's been doing this longer than almost anyone. Decades of work, hundreds of engagements every single year, no drama, no scandals, no headlines about her personal life splashed across tabloids. She just shows up, does the job, and goes home. By every measure, she's the hardest working member of that entire family. Quiet, consistent. The definition of head down, get it done. And according to Jessica, Meghan dismissed her like she was nothing. The words she remembers, irrelevant, invisible, a non-factor, that's how Meghan described someone who had given her entire adult life to service. Not with anger, not with jealousy, just cold indifference. Like Anne didn't even register as someone worth thinking about. And listen, that wasn't a joke. That wasn't a throwaway comment made in frustration. That was a worldview coming through. Because what it revealed was how Meghan measured people. It wasn't about what you did. It wasn't about how long you'd been doing it. It wasn't about sacrifice or consistency or...
You didn't even want it. You want to be there. But that's the problem. So I could see her having problems or issues.
Showing up when nobody was watching. It was about visibility. It was about attention. If you didn't command the spotlight, you didn't command respect. That's a very specific way of seeing the world. And it tells you a lot about how someone operates. Because in that framework, the people who do the most work but get the least attention don't matter. The ones who grind quietly in the background, forgettable. The ones who don't chase cameras or headlines, invisible. Anne had spent her whole life proving that value doesn't require noise, that service doesn't need applause, that you can show up for decades without ever asking for recognition. And in one sentence, according to Jessica, Meghan reduced all of that to nothing. That moment stuck with Jessica more than the impressions. More than the jokes about William or the jabs at Kate, because those felt like personality. This felt like belief, a real window into how Meghan saw the people around her.
It was because silence had become heavier than the truth. What you're about to hear has never been told in public. Until now. For years,
not as equals, not as family, but as rankings. And if you weren't high enough on her list, you simply didn't exist. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was something colder, complete disregard for someone who had earned respect the hard way. And once you see that kind of thinking, you can't unsee it. Every interaction after that carries a different weight. Every smile starts to feel like calculation. Every moment of warmth starts to look like strategy. Jessica didn't walk away from that conversation angry. She walked away understanding something she hadn't fully seen before. This wasn't about personality clashes or adjusting to a new life. This was about how Meghan ranked the world. And if you weren't useful, visible, or relevant to her goals, you simply weren't worth her time. There's always a moment when someone shows you exactly who they are. For Jessica, that moment happened at a dinner party, not some fancy palace event.
Ditching royal duties. It's deeper than that. It's the way she burns through relationships the second they stop being.
Not a public function with cameras and handlers, just a private table, trusted people, good food, wine flowing, the kind of setting where guards come down and people say what they actually think. The conversation was easy at first. Stories about life, about the family, about what it was like navigating that world. Meghan was relaxed, confident, comfortable in a way she rarely seemed in public. She was holding court, and everyone was listening. Then someone brought up the Queen, and Meghan didn't hesitate. She didn't pause to choose her words. She just said it. If it weren't for me, they'd still be stuck in the past. I'm the only interesting thing that's happened to that family in decades. Jessica remembers the silence that followed. The way laughter died mid-breath, the way faces shifted, the way the energy in the room changed in an instant.
Kind of reveal you as a tattletale or a blabbermouth or someone that cannot be trusted.
People didn't know how to react. Some looked down, some glanced at each other. Nobody said a word. And then there was Harry. Jessica noticed him too. He didn't laugh, he didn't nod. He didn't back her up. He just stared down at the table, like he was trying to disappear, like he'd heard this kind of thing before and didn't know what to do with it anymore. That sentence wasn't a joke. It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't even frustration slipping out after a long day. It was a declaration, a statement of belief. Meghan genuinely saw herself as the most important thing to happen to that family in a generation. Not Harry, not William, not the causes or the charities or the decades of tradition. Her. And once you hear someone say something like that out loud without a trace of irony, it rewires how you see everything else.
Guys, this one's so juicy. I had to bother Steph on vacation. Hey, Steph, I made a video about Jessica Mulroney.
Every polite moment, every gracious smile, every time she talked about being honored or grateful or humbled, it all starts to feel like performance, like lines being delivered for an audience that wasn't in the room. Jessica says she never looked at Meghan the same way after that night. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how easily they came out. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, no flash of awareness that maybe that was too far. Just certainty. Complete and total certainty that she was right. Hours later, Meghan would be back in front of cameras, smiling, polished, saying all the right things. But Jessica couldn't unsee what she'd witnessed. She couldn't unhear that sentence. And she couldn't pretend anymore that the public version and the private version were the same person. That dinner party wasn't the start of something, it was confirmation.
A real woman would. You'll see a world of pencil skirts. This is one of my favorites.
The moment everything Jessica had been sensing clicked into place. The comments about the Queen, the impressions of William and Kate, the dismissal of Anne, it all pointed in the same direction, and now she had clarity. Not the kind you can show anyone else, clarity for herself. The kind that changes how you move through a relationship forever. Here's something that stuck with Jessica almost as much as what Meghan said. It wasn't the jokes, it wasn't the impressions, it was what Harry did. or more accurately, what he didn't do. In those private moments when Meghan was going off about the family, Harry didn't always laugh. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he played along, chuckled at the right moments, kept the energy light. But other times, he went quiet. His jaw would tighten, his eyes would drop. He'd stare at nothing, like he was somewhere else entirely.
I think Meghan is is an absolute nightmare of a woman, and I do have my suspicions that he ended up with her out of, some sort of trauma.
And here's the thing about silence in a room like that. It's not neutral. When someone's making fun of your grandmother, your brother, your sister-in-law, and you just sit there saying nothing, that silence means something. It's not disagreement, it's permission. It's letting it happen because stopping it would cost you more than staying quiet. Jessica saw that tension play out more than once. A man caught between two worlds. On one side, the family he was born into, the people he grew up with, the grandmother he was raised to respect. On the other side, his wife, the woman he chose, the life he was building, and those two things were pulling him in opposite directions. What Jessica noticed was that Harry never pushed back. Not once. He might have gone quiet, he might have looked uncomfortable, but he never said, "Hey, that's enough." He never defended anyone, he never stepped in.
Lucky to have these girls in my life. I'm not sure I would have made it without these three.
He just absorbed it, took it in, let it wash over him like background noise he'd learned to tune out. And that kind of dynamic tells you a lot about what was happening in that relationship. One person was speaking, dominating the conversation, setting the tone. The other was adjusting, absorbing, making himself smaller so the peace wouldn't break. Jessica didn't see partnership in those moments. She saw imbalance. One voice loud, the other fading into the background. And when that pattern repeats enough times, it stops being a moment. It becomes the relationship. She noticed how Harry's body language shifted depending on who was around. In public, he seemed steady, grounded, the prince everyone expected. But in those private rooms, something was different. He seemed smaller, quieter, like he was constantly reading the room to figure out what was expected of him.
A black content creator. Meghan just likes to call everybody racist. But guess what? Lately,
that's not peace, that's survival mode. And it's hard to watch someone you've known for years slowly lose pieces of themselves in a relationship without ever saying a word about it. Jessica didn't blame Harry. She understood the position he was in. Loving someone and disagreeing with them are two different things. But when silence becomes your only response, when you stop defending the people who raised you, something inside starts to shift. And whether Harry realized it or not, everyone around him could see it happening. The man who used to joke around, push back, hold his own, he started fading. And in his place was someone who seemed to be holding his breath, waiting for permission to speak, hoping the next moment wouldn't be another one he'd have to sit through in silence. For years, Jessica defended Meghan when whispers started, when doubts crept in, when people around her started asking questions.
Jessica, and there was some Instagram post that was out that everyone thought was about her, but I didn't really care about that.
She shut it down. She stayed loyal. She told herself that whatever she was seeing wasn't the full picture. That Meghan was under pressure, that the situation was complicated, that friendship meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, even when things didn't add up. And things didn't always add up. Stories that seemed to shift depending on who was listening, moments that felt rehearsed, reactions that didn't quite match the situation. Jessica noticed all of it, but she filed it away, kept it to herself, told herself it wasn't her place to judge. That's what loyalty looked like to her. You don't question, you don't dig, you stand beside the person you care about, even when standing there starts to feel uncomfortable. But then something changed. Meghan asked for something that crossed a line.
Meghan Markle's former bestie, Jessica Mulroney, posted a cryptic quote. By the way, can celebrities, and I use that term very loosely,
Jessica doesn't go into full detail about what it was, but the implication is clear. It wasn't just about being a good friend. It wasn't about emotional support or keeping a secret. It was about putting herself on the line. Her name, her credibility, her reputation, all to protect Meghan's image. And that's when Jessica realized what this friendship had actually become. It wasn't mutual, it wasn't balanced. It was expectation dressed up as closeness. A relationship where one person gave and the other took, where loyalty only flowed in one direction. When Jessica said no, things moved fast. There was no conversation, no attempt to work through it, no space for disagreement. The friendship didn't slowly fade, it was erased, messages stopped, access vanished.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has been given the feedback that her lifestyle brand is not wanted many times.
Years of trust gone overnight. That's not how friendships end. That's how transactions end. When someone no longer serves the purpose they were brought in for, they get cut. Clean, fast, no looking back. Jessica says that moment changed how she saw the entire relationship. Every memory got reframed. Every kind gesture started to look like strategy. Every moment of closeness started to feel like positioning. She wasn't angry. Not at first. She was confused. How do you go from being someone's inner circle to being completely erased? How does a friendship that deep just vanish because you said no once? The answer, she realized, was that it was never as deep as she thought. She was useful. And when she stopped being useful, she stopped existing. That's what broke the silence for Jessica. Not bitterness, not revenge.
Besides, now Meghan dropped her like a hotcake and dumped her once Jessica was cancelled in the public eye.
Just the slow, painful realization that what she thought was real had been conditional the whole time. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back to pretending. She carried those memories for years after that. Not because she wanted to hold on to them, but because she didn't know what else to do with them. They sat in her mind like unfinished sentences, things she wanted to say but never got the chance to. And eventually, the weight of holding all that became heavier than the weight of letting it go. That's what this is, not an attack, not a takedown. Just someone finally putting down what was never hers to carry in the first place. When you step back and look at everything Jessica shared, one thing becomes clear. None of this happened overnight. The comments about the Queen, the impressions of William and Kate, the dismissal of Anne, the dinner party declaration, Harry's silence, the friendship that vanished the moment it stopped being useful.
You did. And there are two moments in the article that really stuck out at me.
Please share.
So the writer writes,
These weren't random moments. They were steps, a pattern, something building beneath the surface long before anyone on the outside could see it. Jessica didn't come forward with anger. She didn't come forward looking for payback. She came forward because holding on to all of it had become heavier than finally letting it go. And when someone carries something that long, they're not trying to destroy anyone. They're just trying to breathe again. What stuck with her most wasn't any single comment. It was the way everything connected. The way Meghan moved through that world like she was measuring it, deciding what was worth her time and what wasn't, who mattered and who didn't. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't confusion, it was calculation, quiet, steady, and always a few steps ahead. According to what Jessica observed, Meghan never saw herself as a supporting figure. Not in the family, not in the marriage.
I was actually ready to tell you guys a story about the wedding.
Yeah,
do you want to hear it?
Yes, we still do.
Okay.
Not in any room she walked into. She saw herself as the center, the main event. Everything else was either useful or in the way. And when you see someone operate like that up close, it changes how you understand everything that came after. The public exits, the interviews, the headlines, the carefully worded statements. None of it feels random anymore. It all starts to look like pieces of a bigger picture that was being put together long before anyone realized what was happening. Jessica doesn't claim to know what comes next. She's not pretending to have answers for the future, but she knows what she saw. She knows what she heard. And she knows the difference between someone struggling to find their place and someone who never intended to stay in one. The moments she witnessed weren't about fitting in. They were about standing apart, about being seen.
Mirror selfies in which her wedding band was seemingly missing from her finger via Instagram. If we were to run it back, Jessica and Ben met
about making sure that no matter what happened, the spotlight never drifted too far. That's the part that stuck with her. Not the drama, not the fallout, just the quiet realization that none of it was accidental. Every comment, every silence, every shift in loyalty, it was all moving towards something, and whether or not people wanted to see it, the signs were there the whole time. Some people build relationships to last. Others build them to serve a purpose, and when the purpose runs out, so does the relationship. Jessica learned that the hard way. And now, after years of keeping it inside, she's finally saying what she saw out loud. Not to convince anyone, not to win anything, just to finally stop carrying it alone. If this hit different for you, drop a comment and let me know which part stood out. If you're new here, subscribe and hit that bell. There's more coming. I'll see you in the next one.